fired up for 2015?
Yeah!
I'm so excited. You know, I keep, everywhere I go, I keep seeing this bumper sticker. I want to know if anybody will admit to this particular bumper sticker. An American voting for Obama is like a chicken voting for Colonel Sanders. Who has that? Who has that bumper sticker? Unbelievable. You want that bumper sticker, right? So here's what I'm thinking, folks. America then, give me liberty. America today, just give me. Is this true? Yeah. Absolutely. So we got to do something about it. I'm sure the last person you wanted to hear from tonight is another lawyer. Right? Because the lawyers are the problem out in Washington, D.C., right? Amen. They're the problem. Right? They're the guys who go to law school. You know, this is true. You go to law school, and most law schools do not require you to read the Constitution. I hear some people saying, what? This is, no, do we have any attorneys in the house? We got one back here, we got one back. We've only got 2, 3. Are any of you guys required to read? I'm not talking about case law and how the U.S. Supreme Court has interpreted the Constitution. Were any of you required to read the document? I don't see any hands going up. I wasn't either. What we were required to do was essentially look at what the Supreme Court had said about the document. You weren't learning about original intent. You weren't learning about the founders and their framework. You weren't learning about any of those things. Getting feisty here. You weren't not learning about any of those things, that we wonder what's going on. We've handed over power to a lot of these people that have no concept of what it means to be free, of what the Constitution is designed to do, what the purpose of government ultimately is, what it means when we say popular sovereignty. We don't understand those concepts anymore, and we've got lawyers in the driver's seat. And so, as I say, you know, that probably one of the last people you want to hear from is a lawyer, but, you know, I've distanced myself from that stuff, right? One of the good guys. But I have to tell you, I understand your perception of lawyers. There was, not too long ago, out in the middle of the country, not too far away, there was a lawyer who was out hunting. I don't know if you heard about this. He was out hunting, and he shot a bird, and the bird went out into this property, and he went to go climb the fence of the property to grab the bird, and this old farmer pulls up. Farmer versus the lawyer. Who do you think won this one? Right?
Farmer.
The farmer says, what are you doing? The lawyer says, I'm going to get that bird. I just shot the bird. And the farmer says, you ain't going anywhere. You ain't going anywhere. The lawyer says, yeah, I am. I shot that bird. That's my bird. Farmer says, no, that's not the way we do it in these parts. The way we do it in these parts is called the 3-kick rule. It's the 3-kick rule. And he says, the lawyer says, well, how does that work? And he says, farmer says, well, I kick you or hit you 3 times, and then you get a chance to do the same thing to me, and we go back and forth, and the last man standing wins. And sure enough, this lawyer says, I can beat this old codger, no problem at all. No problem. So I'll even let him go first. And the farmer says, that's right, I'm going first. And so he kicks him right in the stomach, sending him down to his knees. He then kicks him in the face, nearly taking off his nose. And as he goes down the ground, he kicks him in the rear. I mean, he's on all fours. The lawyer gets up, he's down, but he's not out. And he looks at the farmer and he says, all right, now it's my turn. And the farmer looks at him and says, no, that's okay. You can have the bird. There we go. So I know exactly what you guys would like to do to these lawyers, right? Just for that one opportunity. Well, I want to talk to you about some things, where I think we can go in 2015, and some things that I think that we really need to start doing. But before I tell you a little bit about some tactics and strategy, I want to ask you what you think are some of the greatest concerns that we need to tackle in 2015. And because we have a number of problems. So I want to talk about solutions, and I want to focus on being solution-oriented. Because we spend a lot of time talking about the problem. But I want to talk about the problem for just a moment here. And I want to just get kind of a snapshot here of what you believe the problem is. Let's talk about some of these things, and then I want to offer you some solutions. Some real solutions. When I say real solutions, I mean tonight you are going to leave here with some things that are going to make you a very powerful, powerful, powerful advocate for liberty. I'm going to give you some tools. I'm going to give you 3 things tonight. 3 things that are going to make you a force to be reckoned with. And some of these things I'm going to share with you tonight are tactics that I've been using for almost 12 years in the college classroom. So I've been teaching out at one of the community colleges, University of Phoenix. I've done some guest lecturing at ASU, and these are tactics that I have utilized for almost 12 years. You know, I just returned from Columbia University in September. You imagine what that was like? That was fun. That was fun. And I'm going to tell you about the tactics that I utilized in dealing with those students that are powerful, that get beyond politics, that get beyond the R and the D. Because right now, guys, we have to come to grips with this. The R and the D right now, as it now stands, are nothing more than 2 parties fighting over control of the cockpit. And the planes go in the same direction for the most part, regardless of who's sitting in the driver's seat. The only way we change that is for us to step up. Because government is a direct reflection of we the people, right? Right? The reason why we have individuals in government who don't understand the Constitution, who don't understand what it means to be free, who don't understand limited government, who don't understand the 10th Amendment, who don't understand states' rights, is because we the people don't understand those things either. So oftentimes, don't we point at government? We point at the U.S. Supreme Court, we point at Congress and the various congressmen, and we point at the executive branch and President Obama or President Bush or whoever it might be. We say they're the problem. Or I think the reality is they're the symptom of the problem. The real problem is we the people. And until we together come to grips with this idea that we the people are the problem, we're going to do what I call shooting rubber dummies. Right? We continue to shoot outside of ourselves instead of looking to ourselves for the problem. And so I want to give you some real ammunition, if you will. And when I say ammunition, I'm not talking about advocating for a violent revolution, because I don't think we need to go there. I think an intellectual revolution can take place in this country over the next couple of years. It's already happening. We're having conversations today in 2015 that we weren't having 10 years ago. That's progress. That gives me hope. And we're seeing individuals one by one come to grips with what's going on. We're seeing one heart, one mind being transitioned through our relationships with them. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to move away from, if we don't fix the problem overnight, the problem's not worth fighting for. We are not going to fix the problem overnight. It's going to happen one individual, one heart, one mind at a time. Let me give you an example. I had a student by the name of Eli. This happened last year, April of last year. 21 years old. And we're walking out, this was week number 14 that he was in my class, and we're walking out to the parking lot. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And he says, Mr. Krauser, can I walk out to your car with you? And I said, absolutely. He says, can I ask you a question that might be a little intrusive? I said, fire away. He says, well, I want to know where you stand on the Second Amendment. I was excited. See, because we had just spent the last 3 hours debating the Second Amendment. I want you to notice something. My student, after spending 3 hours in my class debating the Second Amendment, wanted to know where I stood on the Second Amendment. Yeah, something very interesting was going on in that classroom. There was no indoctrination, there was the marketplace of ideas going on. We were talking about both sides. We were talking about gun control as well as free access to firearms. We were talking about both sides. Guess what happens when you open up a classroom like that? The majority of individuals fall down on the side of freedom. Right? And we wonder why we have going on in our country what's going on. Right? Individuals go into the classroom today, and most professors do what? They tell them how to think. They tell them what to think. And they come out not even understanding what's on the other side, what the other options are, not even understanding what it means to be free. And so this student, Eli, says, where do you stand on the Second Amendment? And he said, well, Eli, I believe that individuals should have free access to firearms. I believe that the Second Amendment says what it means and means what it says. And he says, well, I don't understand that, Mr. Krauser. I said, why don't you understand that? He says, well, I want to ask you where you stand when it comes to party politics. What party are you affiliated with? I said, well, I'm a registered Republican. And he says, I don't get this, Mr. Krauser. He says, you're all about free access for firearms, but you say you're a registered Republican. I said, sure, that's what I said. He said, I thought it was the Republicans who wanted to take away the firearms from the people. True story, folks. I had to do a double take. I said, you're telling me that your understanding is that it's the Republicans who want to take away the firearms from the people? And he says, yes. I spent 2 hours with this young man in the parking lot. We were out there until midnight in that parking lot. And I got an email 2 weeks after that, at the beginning of May. And he said this. He says, Mr. Krauser, I want to thank you for that conversation that we had that night. He says, as I told you, I was a registered Democrat. And I want you to know that I changed my party affiliation to that of Republican. Awesome stuff, right? Here's the point. The point is this. This was a young man who had never had a conversation, an intelligent conversation with a conservative. He had never had an intelligent conversation with someone that had affiliated with the Republican Party. See, he was being told, he was being fed a line of garbage. And my point is that if we start developing relationships with individuals, that's the way you change the country, one person at a time. Is it hard? Yeah. Would it be a lot easier if we could just wave a wand and tomorrow was just all better? Absolutely. But if we can come together and start reaching out and establishing relationships and stop talking about the R and the D and start talking about principles, we'll start to see some headway. So I was out at a college just recently, and I opened it up very much like I'm going to open up here for a few minutes, and I asked them about the problem. I'm asking these college students, what do you think the greatest problem is? What's going on? And one student raised his hand. He says, an executive branch gone rogue. And I said, you must be referring to executive orders. He says, yes, I am. And so I started talking about executive orders. In dead center in this auditorium, dead center, was a young student who, under his breath, loud enough so I could hear, says this, here he goes again. Here he goes again, knowing that I was going to talk about executive orders, about how they're unconstitutional. And as I talked about it, as I made the argument from the rule of law, he continued to shake his head emphatically, no. He was uncomfortable with what I was saying. And at that point I stopped and said, you know, sir, if you want to come up, I've got an extra microphone, we can have a discussion with one another. We can debate the topic, I have no problem. I'll be respectful to you, you'll be respectful to me, and we'll talk through this. And of course he wasn't interested in that. But I had to make the point. I had to make this point. See, the difference between me and you is you're about defending an individual. I'm about defending an idea. And so often, isn't it, when we see individuals go, I wonder how many of you reacted to this Boehner vote, or how many conservatives are responding to the Boehner vote. Because I bet you there's a lot of people out there who says they're making excuses for the guy that they voted for. They're making excuses for the guys that they're friends with, right? And they're justifying their actions. There is no justification for what just happened. There is no justification. We've been promised over and over and over that we were going to see change, that there was going to be a new rank and file coming in, people running on the grassroots level. And we got 25 people that vote against Boehner, 221 that vote for Boehner, and you got a guy like Louis Gohmert throwing his hat in the ring, and he gets 3 votes? That's insanity. That's insanity. And my hope is this. We've got to stop having such a short memory. We've got to stop having such a short memory and remember what it is that they're doing and hold them accountable, because here I'll tell you exactly what's going on. They think they're going to come back here in preparation for the 2016 election cycle, and they're going to give you the great smile. Their hair is going to be just nice. They're going to shake your hand, and they're going to tell you how great it is to be your representative, and they're going to try and bamboozle you. They're going to try. Yeah, my hope is it's not this time. My hope is that that's not this time. That we will be the driving force that will awaken them to, we're not going to take it anymore. You know, the Tea Party, Tea Party says, taxed enough already. I have a TEA, taxed enough already. How about tyrannized enough already? Right? Tyrannized enough already. So let me just open this up for just a moment. What is the greatest problem, if you will? We the people are the problem. What are some of the issues that we need to tackle this year? Or even over the next 5, 10 years? What's some of your greatest concerns? Yes?
I'm a snowbird from North Dakota, so I don't get to vote here. But I really admire a lot of things that have happened here. And this is my 6th season here. Everything that gets passed here goes to the 9th District Court and gets shot down.
Yeah.
How are you ever going to stop
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
See, that
You know-
to me, I was at a, had a get-together in our neighborhood talking about this the other day, and real staunch Republicans, and I was telling them about the Tea Party. The guy said, why go? Everything we vote on gets shot down by the 9th District Court, and he's right.
Right.
He has a point.
Yep.
I think it's wrong.
That's a great point. Your name?
Glenn.
Glenn?
Glenn, yes.
Glenn, thank you for that. You know, that's exactly right. When I was going to law school in 1998, there were 32 cases, as I recall, 32 or 34, 32 cases that went up from the 9th Circuit to the U.S. Supreme Court. How many of those cases do you think were overturned?
31.
31. About 28. Only 4 of the cases were not overturned. In 2012, 14 cases went up to the U.S. Supreme Court from the 9th Circuit. How many of those were overturned? 12. 12. So think about this. One of the things that we've got to do when we talk about knowledge, and knowledge is power, one of the things that we've got to do is we've got to start holding these guys accountable who are running for office, because we're not doing it quite as intensively as we need to be doing it. We need to be testing their knowledge. Testing their knowledge as to what it is that they understand and know about this ruling document that they swear to uphold and defend. Because did you know who has the power to establish inferior courts?
Congress.
Congress. So how about try this one on for size? Next election cycle, or when somebody comes to visit you to one of these meetings who is a U.S. congressman, how about we ask him this? The 9th Circuit is a problem. Would you agree? And he's going to say, of course. So what are you going to do about it using Article 1, Section 8 as your guidepost? What will you do about it? See, most of the individuals in Washington, D.C. in Congress don't even know that they have the authority to do what you and I are now talking about. To establish and disestablish. They have the authority to go in and deal with the problem of the 9th Circuit. This is not rhetoric. This is not some theory. Article 1, Section 8 and Article 3 of the Constitution talk about it. It says Congress has the authority to establish inferior courts. What is an inferior court? Anything other than the U.S. Supreme Court at the federal level. So the 13 circuit courts and the 94 district courts. They have the authority to establish and disestablish. And we're letting this nonsense go on, and they come up here and they tell you about what a problem the 9th Circuit is. What are they doing about it? We don't need more laws. Right? What we need are individuals. What we need are more individuals that are going to step up and start repealing laws and start going after these institutions that are hurting us, that are hurting our freedom, that are hurting future generations. Right? That's what needs to happen. You have 250 bureaucracies in Washington, D.C. that create over 6,000 regulations every year. And you know what congressmen tell you when you ask them about that? They'll say, well, I didn't do it, they did it. I only passed, 60 or 70 laws last year. I was only involved with that. Nonsense. You're allowing entities to exist that are unconstitutional. See, and here's how I can prove this. I can prove this by looking at the first paragraph of the Constitution. Very simple. Article 1, Section 1. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution says, all legislative powers herein granted are vested in Congress. Did I miss something? Did I miss something? It says all legislative powers herein granted are vested. You have 250 bureaucracies that are doing what? They're creating law. They're legislating. They're legislating. See, and until we give teeth back to the Constitution, they're going to continue to do what it is that they do. Only the legislature has the authority to do that. So I appreciate that. The 9th Circuit's a big problem. And what are some other thoughts? Yes, back in the back.
This is a little different, but I think we all agree with this. I think the media, TV, radio, newspapers are biased and they don't tell the truth. People watch TV, read newspapers, listen to radio, thinking that they're all perfect and that the news is true.
Yeah.
The media, it's not telling the truth. And you know that just as well as I do. I don't even know.
Yeah.
We all agree. Media is probably the biggest problem in this country.
Yeah, the media, thank you for that. The media is a big problem. But how do you deal with issues of the media when the First Amendment says you have freedom of the press, right? So I'm opposed to having government go in and shutting down the press, even if it's press that we disagree with. Why? Because I believe in freedom. What I believe the answer is you've got to raise up a media giant that believes in conservative values and the principles of freedom to counter the nonsense that we hear over and over and over again every day. So you've got to take back radio. You've got to take back TV. You've got to utilize social media. If you don't have a social media account with Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest, ladies and gentlemen, my perspective is this. Social media of today is the musket of 1776. It's an opportunity to counter some of the things that are going on today. So if you want to take back media, or you want to win back America, part of it, of winning back the culture, is taking back the media. See, Woodrow Wilson, when he stood up in front of the American people in 1913, he knew that he could not sell the progressive argument. And what's the progressive argument? Progressive arguments are very simple. Men and women are not born free, and men and women with power can be trusted. That's the progressive line, and I can prove it. FDR talked about it. Woodrow Wilson talked about it. LBJ talked about it. And Obama talks about it. When he told you that you didn't build that and you didn't get there on your own, what he's saying is this. You are not born free. Only the government can liberate you. Only the government can allow you to get someplace that you want to go. That's progressive mantra. But in 1913, he couldn't have sold that to the American people. How did he do it? Over 100 years, you infiltrate the media, you send a message out, and you start to convince people that this is the way it actually is, and it's the way that it's supposed to be. That's how you win the culture. So we've got to counter this war by engaging and changing the culture. I mean, I believe that we continue to fight election cycles as the first priority. Election cycle battles are not the most important battles. They are not. The most important battles that need to be fought, or the most important battle that needs to be fought, is the cultural war. You see, what's going on today is while we are fighting over the individual who's going to represent us for the next 2, 4, or 6 years, the other side is trying to figure out how to win over the hearts and minds of the upcoming generation. And we're wondering why we're losing? Because we're not engaging them at the cultural level. Right? Is the election cycle battle important? Yes, but there's something far more important. What are some other thoughts about where we're going? Yes?
I would say this much. We are moving to the left. We elect a far left Democrat, and yet we have on the other side a moderate Republican. Why can't we elect a far right Republican to counter the far left Democrat?
You fired up. You're fired up, aren't you, Mike? You're not smiling.
Why is it we're moving to the left, we should be moving to the right or to the center?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And it's going to happen. The way that it happens is incrementally. The way that it happens is incrementally. Right? Again, going back to this idea, it's not going to change overnight. But if we can move, so think about it in this context. On this end of the spectrum, you have anarchy, and on this spectrum, you have tyranny. So on this side, you have too much government, and over here, you have not enough government. In the middle is what we would call what?
Balance center.
Yeah, the balance center. We could call it a Republican form of government. We could call it Concord. We call it whatever we want, right? But whether there's an appropriate balance, right? And so it's constantly getting back towards Concord. Where are we at now? We're between Concord and tyranny, and we're way over here. Right? The idea is to move it back incrementally, back towards a Republican form of government. And it's not going to happen in one fell swoop. It's not going to happen in one fell swoop, but I understand the frustration. We recognize. But you want to know something that frustrates me? In 2009, when I got involved with the Tea Party, I was hearing people say that if we don't clean the problem up in the next 2 years, we're done. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2015, and we're still here, and we're still fighting. And the thing is, freedom is always up for grabs. Don't ever let someone sell you a lie that if we don't win the next election, we're done. If we don't win in 2016, we're done. If we don't win in 2020, it's nonsense. Does it get more difficult to win? Of course it does. But we've been dealing with, what we're dealing with today, with respect to government, is the same thing that human beings have always dealt with when it comes to government. There's nothing new under the sun. We're dealing with the same exact thing that governments have always done. intrude on the liberties of the people in order to acquire more power. It's the same thing going on. So freedom is always up for grabs. Liberty is always up for grabs. Restoration to the rule of law is always up for grabs. The question is, will you be able to mobilize enough people? And you don't need a lot of people, folks. Think about this. You need maybe 5% of the population to see a significant freedom shift. 5%. Look at what happened at the time of our founding. You got 2 to 3%. 2 to 3% that stood up. They were the people that led. They were the people that were driving the freedom narrative, if you will. They were driving the narrative. And because of what they did, they were able to convince the rest of the population that this is the way it's supposed to be. So don't get frustrated when we determine as a group that, well, we can't make any progress. Because let me just throw this out to you. In 1788, the Constitution was ratified. Was there still slavery?
Yes.
Absolutely. 1865? The 13th Amendment?
December of
77 years. 77 years. What I'm getting at is, you could have had individuals throw in the towel at the time of the founding and say this isn't worth fighting for. 77 years later, liberation came. Think about civil rights. Civil rights has always been a battle in America. And you look at the civil rights that took place in the 1960s. That started back in 1788 and before. 170 some odd years later, finally we start to make serious headway. It took time. Think about women's rights. 1788. And when did you have women's right to vote in the 19th Amendment?
1920 was when the first women voted.
Yeah. So 130 some odd years.
And ever since.
Right? What I'm getting at is the people that make things happen are the individuals that stand up and say, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm in it for the long haul, and I'm not going to let someone convince me that the fight is no longer worth fighting. Right? So other concerns. Before we go on, I want to show you some tactics. Yes?
It kind of goes up again. I get very frustrated in hearing people call this a democracy concept.
Yes. Yeah.
Or the far left. Where they don't come right out. I mean, I think more Americans would wake up if they actually, instead of saying far left, say communists or Marxists, you know, and say it right out instead of all this wishy-washy stuff. And I think more people would wake up and get on board with this.
Yes.
You actually call it a duck,
Yeah.
you know?
Thank you for that. What are you doing with your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren?
Don't have any.
Yeah, if you don't have any, I understand. But those of you that do, what are you doing? Let me recommend to you something, because this is something I'd really like to brainstorm over the next year and start getting our young people involved. Right? We've been doing something for several years in our own family, Constitution Night on Sunday nights. And the beautiful thing, the reason why I bring that up is because you talked about a democracy versus a republic. I love it when I get phone calls from my son's government teacher in high school who says, your son's getting out of line. Well, why is he out of line? Because he won't let the democracy versus republic argument go. I said, well, I'm not going to tell him to shut up. That's it. We're going to have the debate. I love it. I mean, when we're creating freedom activists as young people, can we get our young people excited about it? Can we see that there's fun to be had in the freedom movement? Yes?
Jane, we were very involved in the Tea Party of East Valley and then went on to do things with Patriots. But what we did is we called Heritage Foundation, we ordered constitutions, over 1,000 of them, and we gave them out to the kids. I even called my grandson's school because he was in We the People today, and they allowed the kids to get the Constitution, and I supplied them with all they wanted. And for my grandchildren, I have 11 of them. Every one of them for the Christmas present in their stocking was the Constitution.
I love it. Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Our kids will start to do those things. Our grandchildren will start to do those things that we identify as important. And we get them involved, and we have the debates, and we talk. I love it when my 5-year-old daughter, this happened to my 7-year-old son. My 7-year-old son, he came home, this was about 2 months ago, he came home, he says, Dad, I got in an argument at school. I'm like, awesome, what was this about? He says, me and my friend were arguing about Obama. And I said, well, how'd this argument go? I said, Dad, I told him that Obama steals stuff. Yeah, Obama steals stuff. And I said, well, what did he say? He says, Obama doesn't steal stuff. He doesn't go into people's homes. See, what I recognized was I had taught my son that there was theft going on, and it was theft by taxation. Right? Another great opportunity, though, to explain. Right? So we sat down, we had a great discussion about what we mean when we say theft. Right? But the thing that I love is you've got my little girl, 5 years old, coming home. I come home at the end of the day. So, Dad, how's the fight for freedom going? Are we winning? Are we winning? I'm like, you better believe we're going to win this thing. Absolutely. I love it. So it's fun. We can get our young people excited about this. You know, I have to tell you, yeah, many of you, I mean, I know so many of you, and it's so good to see so many of you that I haven't seen in quite some time. But you know, when, that I love, I mean, I have my burning Constitution. Who hasn't seen my burning Constitution? Everybody's seen my burning Constitution, the Constitution lights on fire? Who hasn't seen it? Okay, oh, there we go. All right, I'm going to bring my burning Constitution someday. You open that up in a college classroom and you want to see all heck break loose, and it's a lot of fun. Or go into a college or a high school classroom. But I remember, I love to bring in that entertaining component. And I have to tell you, I want to be open with you here. There's a lot of people that says, the entertainment, take that someplace else. Take that someplace else. And those people that say that don't understand how to win back the culture. Because this culture is being won over by entertainment. You entertain the younger generation and you infiltrate certain ideas into that entertainment. And they start to believe certain things. Right? Why can't we do the same thing when it comes to freedom? We can do those things, and as we spend time together, we're going to share those ideas and what that looks like to really win over the next generation. And so, I want to make sure that I've got enough time to tell you the three things. Well, yeah, you've been hardly able to keep still, and I saw you here. I saw you there. Yes.
I knew you saw me, Shane.
I knew, and I was acting like I was ignoring you.
You're doing a good job. I just want to point out that one of the things that we really have to get a handle on is we can't count on the federal government to fix the federal government. No. It's the states. We have to understand that popular sovereignty means we have to fix it in our states, yep. And that means we have to get our legislature understanding what we have to do on the state level. And when all the states, enough of them at least, get the idea and understand, then we can figure out how to fix the federal government and put it back on its chain and yank the chain.
I love the word that you used, popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means, there was a word that words that Thomas Jefferson used, it means power in the people. Right? So we the people, the idea of unalienable rights, the fact that all power to govern derives from the people, that's popular sovereignty. In other words, who's sovereign? We're sovereign. Right? They work for us. And I know it sounds so trite because we've been talking about this for 5 years. But do you understand the culture doesn't understand that? Right? When I go into a college classroom or walk into an auditorium and I ask intelligent kids at Columbia University or even down at a community college level, and I ask them where do your rights come from, and the overwhelming majority of them say they come from government, you know you've got a problem. The overwhelming majority. In my class that I've been teaching for over 10 years, the first day of every class I ask them that question, and each and every semester it's the same thing. Over 70% of the students say our rights come from government. My youngest student was 15, all the way up to 85, walking through the classroom. So we understand it. How do we embrace the freedom narrative so that your neighbor understands it and doesn't feel like you're going to, strangle them if they don't listen to you? How do you do that? I want to talk about some of those things. Donnie, did you have something? Donnie, how you doing? Have you guys met Donnie? Donnie Petrie, Donnie Ray, wave your hand. Oh, it's a he's a mean old cowboy. He's a what's that? He's one of the good. He's a mean old cowboy though. A mean old cowboy. The old style. So, does anybody here line dance? Who line dances here?
Donnie!
Donnie, do you line dance? Do you line dance? So guys, So on my radio program, I had Ammon Bundy on the radio program. I had Cliven and Ammon. They were down here, and I had them both on the program. And I said, you don't know what you're talking about. We line dance? He says, you're not a cowboy. That's what he tells me. He says, you're not a cowboy. I said, no. He says, Ammon and Cliven are coming in today. And you ask them. So Cliven comes in and sits down. Ammon sits down and says, I got a question for both of you. I'm going to start with you, Cliven. Cliven, do cowboys line dance? And what was his response?
He said, why would they do that?
Why would they do that? By the way, speaking of the bunnies, Ammon Bundy's going to be here 2 weeks from tonight. So mark your calendar. 2 weeks from tonight, he's going to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun. Those of you that have neighbors, friends that have never been involved, and those of you that have heard Ammon Bundy and the credibility that he brings to the table, he knows how to win over the culture. He brings common sense, and he brings a lot of credibility. Bring them here. Let them hear the story that Ammon has to tell. So, by the way, Donnie is my co-host. He's my co-host. Many of you know that I've been a radio talk show host for about 2.5 years now. I was on 960 for a year and a half. I was on 1100 for about 6 months. And we were syndicated about a month ago out of Washington, D.C. and New York. And we're very excited, so you can follow us. We'll give you information. You go to libertystormradio.com, but we were syndicated by Wayne Dupree out of New York, and we're so excited. About 600,000 listeners right out of the gate, so we're very, very excited about what's going on. So let's get the message out. We're getting the message out. So, all right, I'm fired up. So I want to show you. Can we go to the next slide here? But it's just this training, I'm about to give you a glimpse of something. Who here are PCs? PCs. Okay. Here's what I want to invite you to do. I've had a number of PCs that have contacted me moving into 2015. What I'm about to show you is actually a 4-hour PC presentation that is designed to do something very, very important. It's not designed to teach you how to go out and get signatures. It's not designed to teach you how to knock on a door. It's not designed to teach you how to put up a booth. It's designed to show you and teach you how to engage with someone who either doesn't understand where you're coming from, stands on the other side. It's designed to do that. I believe that what I'm about to show you, just a glimpse of it, can turn our PCs and the Republican Party into a bunch of constitutional fighter pilots. Understand what it means to be free. In 4 hours. In 4 hours, I will give your average PC more information and education than they probably received in the entire time that they've been a PC in the Republican Party. And that's a bold statement. But I know, because I've seen what it is that I'm about to show you has done. I've tried it on the campus of Columbia University. Right? I've tried it in my own classroom, the liberal bastion. I've tried it in my classroom for over a decade. I know it works. Can I show you scientific studies? No. Can I tell you anecdotally that it works? Can I tell you that 90% of my students who come into my classroom are liberal? And they leave 16 weeks later, 9% of them are conservative? Right? Can I tell you this? And it's not, I want to emphasize, it's not because I'm indoctrinating. It's we're having both sides of the argument. We're talking about both sides. And I love when we're an hour in, the first day of class, and the students say, my head's spinning. And then they come up afterwards, after our first 3 hours together, and say, well, Mr. Krauser, it's the first time I've met you, but I want to know, why have I never heard these ideas before? I said, buckle in, because you're about to hear a lot more. We're going 16 weeks together, and you're going to hear a lot of things that you probably never heard before. But we're going to present both sides of the argument. So, take a look at this. When you see this, what are some thoughts? What comes to your mind? What's that? Opposites, okay? What does the top one stand for? Obama is the logo that he used. What's the bottom one stand for? I hear freedom. The Tea Party has embraced this, right? They embraced this as a logo. Are there any good things to be said about forward? About the logo on top? Any good things to be said?
It's spelled right.
It's spelled right. It's spelled right. Yeah, the top.
The top one is offense. The bottom one is defense.
Yeah.
We got to turn that around.
Yes, absolutely. Buckley.
Another observation, the top one is shiny and new. The bottom one is old and dingy. It looks like mustard that's been left out too long.
Do you hate the Tea Party?
No! But if I had no idea...
Guys,
Who invited him?
there's a rope out in the foyer. There's a rope. And what do we do in a democracy? We hang them high. Yes.
If I were some alien from some other planet and I were to show up here and look at those two signs, one is shiny and new and moving forward and stuff, looking to the future, and the other one is, well, it's sort of dingy and old and looking to the past. If I were an alien, completely unaware with what the Gadsden flag meant, or I guess means, if I had no clue about the intrinsic value of the Gadsden flag, that's what I would think.
Okay.
One is shiny and new, the other one is...
Looks like mustard. Okay.
True.
Someone said true. Yes.
Despite what you just said, the problem with what you just said is, despite what Obama says, aliens don't get a say-so.
Wow, look at you. So let's talk about this for just a moment. We know Forward embraces, when we talk politically, it embraces progressivism. When we've got to define our terms, and as we spend the next several months together, and we're going to define our terms. We're going to define, what does it mean when you say someone's progressive? I think too often we use it just as to call someone a name. We use it as a label, but we haven't defined our terms. We do the same thing with liberal, conservative. What do those things mean? And so if I had to solidify our perspective in a nutshell, what it is that we believe in, when we talk about the Constitution and freedom, I think our philosophy sits as follows. Men and women are born free, and men and women cannot be trusted with power. That's the essence of the Constitution, right? Yep. So take that, that's what we believe in a nutshell. And take progressivism up top. Obama, what do they believe? I mentioned it a little earlier. Men and women are not born free, and men and women can be trusted with power. Men and women are not born free. Well, we hear Obama talking about that, right? You didn't build that, you didn't get there on your own. We also hear that men and women can be trusted with power. Don't you remember just about a year ago, he says, you may hear voices telling you that tyranny is constantly lurching around the corner. I urge you to reject those voices. See, many of us laughed about that, but we also understood that that was classic progressive mantra. He was simply living out his political philosophy. So we've got to define our terms. What does it mean when we say someone's progressive? And what are we dealing with? And so when you look at the top component, or the top logo, that's exactly what it is, progressivism. And down below, we've defined what it is that we stand for. I like the policies, the political philosophy of what the Tea Party stands for, much more obviously than what's up top. But I don't like the tactic. Because forward, what does that mean? I'm coming to you. Whether you like it or not, I'm coming into your living room. Whether you like it or not, you're going to watch me on TV. Whether you like it or not, you're going to learn about it in the schools. Right? And what do we say? Just leave me alone.
We're going to fight.
Just leave me alone. So long as you don't come into my territory, I'm just fine. That's defense. They're playing offense. They're winning over hearts and minds of the next generation, and we're playing defense, saying, well, if it's not my child, I'm okay. Right? That's the problem. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to take on a more offensive posture. Right? A more offensive posture like what it is that they're doing. In other words, counter what they're doing. Because we already know how the other side plays the game. When you go on the offensive and you defend your positions, I can tell you exactly how it's going to go 90% of the time. You racist, you homophobe, you misogynist, you're a bigot. Right? That's how it's played out every time. And what do we do? Because we're playing defense, what do? I'm not a racist. I promise I'm not a racist. My best friend in high school was black. I'm telling you, I'm not a racist. No, you're a racist. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. I mean, in the Republican Party, we have a Hispanic outreach group, and I talk to those guys. I'm friendly with them. I'm telling you, not a racist. Well, if you're not a, you're at least a misogynist. You hate women. No, I'm married to one. I promise. Right? And so they do this. Do you see how I'm playing defense? How about I try this one on for size? You racist? I'm a racist. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. I'm the racist. You're accusing me of being a racist. Well, let's talk about who the real racist is. It's your party that affiliates and has adopted the affirmative action program. In other words, you look at the color of one's skin to determine whether or not they're qualified. That's racism. You're the racist, not me. Right? In addition, your policies disproportionately impact minorities when it comes to foreclosure rates. when it comes to unemployment rates. Who's the racist? I'm not the racist. I'm the one who believes what the Constitution says, which is equal protection under the law. You see what I just did? I shifted the argument. Now what are they doing? They're playing defense. They're playing defense. Now you're forcing them to justify why their position is a position that carries any weight with it. See, and I want you to understand as we talk about some of these tactics, and we're not going to have enough time tonight to talk about them. In this PC training, I take you through it. And I show you, how is it that you argue with a hardcore liberal? You never want to argue with a hardcore liberal. You don't. There's only one time when you ever want to argue with a hardcore liberal, when you have an audience. That's the only time. That's the only time. So Lawrence O'Donnell, MSNBC, SB 1062 came down. Remember SB 1062? That was the Religious Freedom Bill here. Our legislature passed it and went to the governor's desk, and our legislators went running for the hills. Right, remember that? I was fired up about it because I was a big believer in SB 1062. And so Lawrence O'Donnell, his producer, calls and says, Lawrence O'Donnell would like to interview you on his show about SB 1062. You think I'm fired up about that? You better believe it because I got an audience. It might only be 10 people, but I still got an audience. Right? And so here's what happens. His producer calls me on the phone. Right? About 6 hours. It was about noon, and the show was going to happen at 6. And he says, and typically you go through these interviews. The producers want to see what you're going to say. Are you a whack job? What are you going to say? And so we started talking about this. We went for 15 minutes. And he says, you know, Mr. Krauser, we're excited. You know, and these were his words. He says, you're really articulate on this particular issue. I said, well, I'm really excited. I'm honored. I'm honored that Lawrence is going to allow me to come on and have this debate with him. I got a call a half hour before I was supposed to go on air. And what did that phone call consist of? No thanks. No thanks. No thanks. See, when you go on the offensive, because during that interview, what happened? He wanted to see if I would play defense. He was asking me questions and saying, you're going back to the civil rights movement, right? Aren't you embracing a racist policy, right? By logical extension, by taking this position. You see what he wanted to see if I was going to play defense. I wasn't playing defense. We turned it around. He didn't want it. Same thing happened with the professor out of Washington, D.C. at Georgetown University, who came out and said the Constitution is outdated, it's archaic, and it's evil. Right? Georgetown University teaches constitutional law. I flew my sorry rear end out to Washington, D.C., walked into Georgetown University's Law Center, walked up to the second story, knocked on his sorry door, and he opened the door, and he was there, and we sat down for a half hour, and I challenged him to a debate. To make a long story very, very short, I got an email 2 months later saying, sorry, not interested in this. Right? So what I'm suggesting is taking an offensive posture. I'm not talking about in your face. Right? I'm kind of giving the example of what it sounds like to go off on a hardcore liberal. Right? And I said, again, I would say you never debate with one unless you've got an audience. What I'm really interested in going after are the 40% really that are not, you've got, when you look at the spectrum, according to exit polls, you have 40% that are conservative, 20% that are avowed liberal, and you have a 40% that are uninformed and misinformed. Right? I want to go after the uninformed and misinformed. And if I'm going to go after the uninformed and misinformed, I don't have to tell them that they're wrong. I don't have to yell at them. I don't have to tell them they're idiots. I have to establish a relationship with them, number one. I have to gain credibility with them. And once I've gained credibility, they'll listen to me. They'll listen to us. It's establishing those relationships. Because most Americans out there don't know as much about what it means to be free as you do. We've been involved in this fight for a long time. Most Americans don't know more about the Constitution than you do. Right? Most of them don't. But when we gain credibility, when we establish that relationship, we can really have an impact. Go to the next slide, because we're kind of cutting it for time. There's our agenda right there, right? Leave us alone. Their agenda is control. Next slide. But here's the problem. That's the problem. A minority willing to push an agenda will always dominate a majority that just wants to be left alone. A minority that wishes to push an agenda will always dominate a majority that just wants to be left alone. Most Americans want to be left alone. No, even liberals. And I'll prove it. I'll prove it that even they want to be left alone. But here's what happens. So my 6 kids, we got 5 boys, and we finally got our little girl. And I'll tell you what it's like. My 5-year-old daughter, we roll into a store, and here's what she understands. Dad just wants to get out of here without a scene. Right? He just wants to get out of here without a seat. And so what happens once my daughter recognizes that I just want to get out without a seat? What does she understand? She is in control. She holds the power. All she's got to do is scream, and Dad says, take the ice cream sandwiches, let's go. Right? That's all we got to do. That's all she's got to do. And that's what they do. They yell and scream. Do we understand how liberals operate? Let me tell you how they operate. This is not rhetoric. This is a reality. They come to you. They come to us. They go to the Republicans or the conservative congressmen in Washington, D.C., and here's what they say. We want to get rid of all guns. 1995, Dianne Feinstein went on national TV and says, if I had the votes, I would make every last firearm illegal. Do not doubt it. If they had their way, they would take away the guns. So what happens? They come and they say, we want to take your firearms. And the conservatives stand up and say, oh, there they go. You're yelling. You're screaming. And we say, no, 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 we're not going to give you that. And what do they say in response? Let's sit down and compromise. And then we sit down, conservatives, Republicans, freedom lovers, sit down at the table of compromise, and as a result of that compromise, what do you get? Concealed weapon permits, limitations on magazine capacity, universal background checks, and the list goes on and on and on. Why? Because we sat down at the table of compromise. What I say is, why don't we start getting them to sit down at the table of compromise? You know what that would look like? Why don't we start compromising on things like the Department of Education? Why don't we start compromising on things like the IRS? We sit down and force them to compromise. Do we have anybody with the intestinal fortitude in Washington, D.C. to make a scene? Unfortunately, most of the individuals tell us one thing. They go out there, and a guy like John Boehner sits down with them and says, you want to get somewhere while you're here? If you want to get here, you're going to follow the rules. And if you make any noise, you won't be sitting on any of those committees. And more than that, you will not win your next election. I'll make sure of it. They're cutting deals. They're cutting deals like that, backroom deals. So let me give you the 3 tactics, because I wish we had more time, because I'm so fired up right now. Fired up. So go ahead and go on. Keep going. There's our strategy. There's what our strategy needs to be. Oh, stop. See, that's what we do. Bailouts, healthcare, amnesty, global warming, tax throughage, gun control, gay marriage. They throw it at us and we're pulling our hair out. Stop it. Yep. Right? Learn to counter it. Go ahead. All right. Next one. Next one. Okay. All right. I told you I was going to give you 3 tools tonight. And I'm about to, if you haven't seen, I know some of you have seen this before, and many of you who have seen this use this on a daily basis.
Where's our t-shirt?
Yeah, that's right. We got to get a t-shirt. I know Ralph is a guy who's using this tactic all the time. Again, this is a tactic I've been using for well over 10 years. And it's the most powerful tactic that I can utilize when it's talking to an individual not wanting to get involved in the political discussion. I don't need to talk politics in order to win somebody over on the idea of liberty. So I want you to imagine this. Let me show you how effective this is. Imagine this. You go into an auditorium at a college, and there's 700 students there. And they know what you stand for. You know, I was in Montana just recently. I did 15 events in 3 days. And one of them was at a college campus. 4 of my events were done under threat of protest by college students. Love it. 4 of them under threat of protest. In other words, hoping I was going to go away. And I wasn't going away. It just fired me up. More protesters, the better it is. I love it. Fire them up. Bring them in. Hold your signs in the back. And I'll bring you up and we'll have the debate. It's just fun. So anyways, so here's what, so you have, I know what they have these preconceived notions about what it is that we stand for, right? He's a Constitution guy. He's a right-wing wacko. You know, he believes God's the answer. This guy's crazy. So come into the auditorium and I ask him this question. And I'm going to ask you this question. Who here wants to be told what to do?
Only by my wife.
No, that's my wife.
Who said that? Wow, Mark Senior again. No one wants to be told what to do. Who here? Nobody wants to be told what to do. Who here wants to be left alone? Who here wants to be left alone? Imagine what just happened. So you're on a liberal college campus, And I've immediately wiped away those preconceived notions by asking a very simple question. Who here wants to be told what to do? And not one hand goes up, not one. And I tell them this, I'm right with you folks. I don't want to be told what to do. So here's my question for you. Why is it that we embrace government policies that constantly tell us what to do?
Money.
Right? That's the question for them. Right? What have you just done? You've just changed, it's been an entire paradigm shift in 60 seconds. Right? They've just agreed with me. On the first day of my college class, this is what I asked them. And guess what happens when we get to week number 9? And they start talking about, well, no, I think government should do this, right? Wait a second, you all agreed on the first day of class that you wanted to be left alone. That's interesting. You want to be left alone until it's a government policy that you agree with. Now you want to tell everybody what to do, huh? It's not that way. You see the transition that takes place. So, number one, do you want to be told what to do? Here it comes. Who here believes that government should follow the rules? Do you know what? I've never had one student on a college campus raise his hand and say, I don't believe government should follow the rules. See, even liberals believe it. And here's where we stand at a significant advantage. We know what the rules are. They don't. Because if they believe that government should follow the rules, then they have to acknowledge that there's a rule book. And most of them don't know what the rule book says. So what have I just done? It's not in your face. I've established just a common playing field, a playground for us to have this discussion on. And you believe that government should follow the rules. I believe they should follow the rules as well. So let's talk. You told me you want to be left alone. You say government should follow the rules. So let's talk about some of the things going on. So I'm not even talking about the R and the D. Because R and D, again, they're sitting in the same cockpit together. Okay? And then the third question. Who here wants to keep what they earn? Fired up. That's it. You want to keep what you earn. So here I've had this before. I have had some students raise their hand and say, I disagree with you on that one. Yeah. So I'm in an auditorium, about 600-700 students, and there was about 6 kids. I disagree with you. I agree with you on the first 2, but disagree with you on this one. All right, the guys that disagree, stay standing. I want you to stand up, and I've got some questions for you. You don't believe you should be able to keep what you earn. Yeah, tough guys. Right? They're the tough guys out there in the crowd. Right? Because they believe that they've taken the morally superior position. Right? Because they're going to talk about compassion. Right? That's what we're dealing with, the morally superior position. And so I said, okay, here's the deal, guys. I mean, you can't possibly come to Columbia University without having a little bit of money. So here's the deal. I see you guys got the iPhones, and you got the iPads, and you got a computer. So I've got a podium right up here. What I'm going to ask you 6 young men to do is go ahead and bring those things right up here. You're going to put them up here, your iPhones, your computers, your iPads, and I know you got some money in your wallet. Go ahead and put your money up here, and then I promise you this. We're going to walk down the street right here in New York City, and we're going to go to the nearest pawn shop, and we're going to cash this stuff in, and I promise you, I will go into the inner city with you, and we will find individuals to give this money to, the people that deserve it, right? You know, I've never had one person take me up on the offer. Never. Never. You know why? You know why? Because they're not socialists. On Columbia University, they think it's real cool to claim they're a socialist, but they're not really socialist. They're not. See, because what's the moral? We have to explain for them what the morally superior position is. Their position requires theft. Right? In order to take from some to give to another requires theft. Until we somehow expose that, they're going to believe that they've taken a morally superior position. So these are, guys, this is just a tip of the iceberg. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But just think about these 3 things. These 3 things can totally put you in a position of taking an offensive posture when talking with anyone. Doesn't matter who you're talking with. You're talking about, someone's complaining about A, B, and C's going on, and you just say, no, man, I just want to be left alone, man. Yeah, I do too. I just want to be left alone. Now look at the common ground you have with that conversation. Now it's not, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? We both want to be left alone. The overwhelming majority, I've never met an American in the tens of thousands of people that I've talked to that say, I want to be told what to do. Never met one. I've never met a person that says, Mr. Krauser, you're wrong. I want government to tell me what to do because they certainly know how to live my life better than I know how to live my life. I wish they'd just tell me how to live my life. It's never happened. See, this is what I'm getting at. The cultural issue right now, the information that's being fed to the culture is that government can take care of you better than you can take care of yourself. And so I've got my student by the name of Raul, who's in my class a year and a half ago, who comes up to me on the last day of class, 250 pounds, he's a Hispanic kid, great student, flat-rimmed hat, and he says, Mr. Krauser, with tears in his eyes, he says, you saved my life. I said, Raul, what are you talking about, brother? We had a great relationship. What are you talking about? He says, Mr. Krauser, I want you to know that when I came to this class, I believed in this idea of cradle-to-grave security. I believed in it. I believed that it was just fine to have government support in doing A, B, and C. What I didn't recognize, Mr. Krauser, is that I was enslaving myself by embracing those policies. See, this is a Democrat who became a Republican who understood through a relationship what it meant to be free. So think about it, we can do this together. Think about if you could invite your friends. Who are your neighbors? Who are the guys that you're at work with? Bring them here. Right? Is there anything to be ashamed about when we talk tonight? These are principles that are common. Let's bring them here. Let's move out of this facility. We're going to be here twice a month. The first and third Wednesday we're going to be here. The second and fourth Wednesday we're going to be at Burke Basic School. And if you're on the email list, you'll see. We've got Hammond Bundy coming here 2 weeks from now. We'd love to have you at Burke Basic School next week. Right? So first and third Wednesday we're here. Second and fourth Wednesday we're at Burke. If we ever have a fifth Wednesday, we're having a potluck over at Sirius. Potluck at Burke Basic School. We always have a little get-together. I want to leave you with this final thought because I know I've gone over time. And I wish we had more time. Because I'd love to go all night and talk about this. Because I believe that there's still hope. I do. You will never convince me that we can't win this battle. I don't care how bad it gets. You will never tell me. You will never take an ounce of hope out of me. You know, they say that it takes, a man can go for 3 months without, or about 30 days without food. He can go about 3 days without water. He can go about 3 minutes without air. But human beings can't go 3 seconds without hope. I'm here because I believe that there's still hope. And I believe that you're here because you believe the same thing. If you didn't believe there was still a chance of winning this thing back, you wouldn't be here tonight. So what can we do? Can we mobilize in 2015? Can we grow the grassroots? Can we get the young people involved? Can we do these things? Because here's what we are. Here's my final thought. There was an old Wild West town. And in this old Wild West town, they had an issue with water. And what they did was they moved out into an area down at the base of a mountain, but they had the problem with getting water there. So they built a canal. They built a canal that would bring water from the mountain into the town. And they had in that town someone that no one ever really talked about, the ditch rider. The ditch rider. The ditch rider was the guy who would go up and down the ditch to make sure that the ditch was in good repair. To make sure that there was nothing that was going to happen that would cause this town to lose its livelihood. And so they had this deal set up. The children of the ditch rider, they were on watch. They would alternate every night. And if the storm ever started to move in, they'd wake Dad up, the ditch rider. And he'd ride up and he'd put the dam up to make sure that water didn't come in too fast. And so a reporter heard about this and he camped alongside of this trail, hoping to see what would happen if in fact this storm moved in. Well, lo and behold, that night, clap of thunder, and the little girl wakes up her dad and says, Dad, the storm's coming in. He gets on his horse, and this reporter who was camping out says he saw this guy go by. He says he was in tears watching this guy go by. It was muddy. Storm was rolling in, it was starting to rain, and saw this horse riding by so fast. Went up there and dammed up the canal. And when the storm subsided, he came back down and he said the reporter was going back into town, and the guy on his horse rode past the reporter, and the reporter stopped him and said, "Can I talk with you for a moment?" He said, "Sure." He says, "You went up there." And he says, at points in time, we were talking about 18 inches to get up through that trail, and you were going full speed ahead. And the ditch rider says, "Yep, that's my horse. We know every nick and cranny. We know how to get up. we know how to get down, we know where the weaknesses are, and we strengthen the weaknesses within the canal. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that that water is freedom. And I believe that you and I are the ditch riders. That we go up, we already know what's going to happen. We know where the weaknesses are. When we hear the clap of thunder of tyranny rolling in, we're the ones rolling up along that canal, making sure that the rest of society is safe while they sleep. Right? We're the ones that are supposed to be on the front lines. And so my belief is this, ladies and gentlemen, while the rest of America prays, there are a few of us who are riding along the ditch, making sure that freedom is preserved as best as it can be, and that more importantly, that it's restored. We are the ditch riders. We are the people that will stand and give others hope when they feel like there's no hope. You have to be that voice of hope. My dad always said, he said, Shane, provide hope to individuals in pain and you'll never want for an audience. If we can go out and provide hope to a hurting country, you will see the numbers here in an organization like this go through the roof if you provide hope. If it's negative, 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 expect your numbers to dwindle. If it's positive and providing hope, you will see your numbers go through the roof. Because people want to be around others that are providing hope and that are positive. We can do this together. We can save America together. We can restore freedom. Thank you so much for having me.
Wasn't that good?